Level 1. -£4. The number on your banking app has a minus sign in front of it. You stare at it the way you'd stare at a wrong answer, waiting for it to correct itself. It doesn't. You are £4 overdrawn. A coffee subscription renewed overnight, one you'd forgotten was still running. £4. Less than the meal deal in your hand. You're at the self-checkout in a Tesco. You tap your card. Payment declined. There is a man behind you holding a basket, and he looks away quickly, which somehow makes it worse. You tap again, pretending the machine might have misunderstood. Declined. So you take the sandwich out of the bag. Then the drink. You leave the crisps in, because putting everything back would make the moment too obvious. The payment goes through. You walk out with a packet of crisps, and the expression of a man who came in for exactly one packet of crisps. It doesn't stop there. Later that week, another payment leaves the account, and then a direct debit is returned because there is nothing behind it to take. By the time your wages land, £4 has quietly become a much bigger number, and none of the growth was yours. So you ring the bank. The automated voice asks you to say the reason for your call. You say, overdraft. It mishears you twice. When a person finally answers, she sounds genuinely kind. You explain that the payment was tiny. You explain that your wages arrive tomorrow. And then you keep explaining, past the point of usefulness, because somewhere in the middle of it you stopped describing a transaction and started trying to prove that this is not who you are. She listens. Then she tells you there is nothing she can do. The kindness and the decision belong to two different departments, and only one of them is on the phone. You hang up feeling something that isn't quite anger, just tired. Here is what happened on the other side of that call. At this level, the bank did not see a customer who made a £4 mistake. It saw an account that went below zero, a flag, a category, something to be processed before the next call comes in. You weren't hated. Hatred would require somebody to notice you. You were simply too small for anyone to stop the machine. Level 2. £200. You pull it back, 20 hours of overtime, no takeaways. 2 weekends where you said you were busy, when the truth was that leaving the house costs money. And eventually £200 sits in the account and stays there. You check it most mornings. 203, 197, 211. It moves, but it stays on the right side of zero. Nobody congratulates you. To anyone else, £200 is nothing at all. To you, it is evidence that the month hasn't beaten you yet. Then the boiler stops working, and the engineer says £480. You look at the 200, then at the boiler, then back at the 200. So you apply for a credit card. The ordinary one is declined. What the bank offers instead is a card for people it doesn't quite trust, a small limit, and a rate high enough to tell you exactly what it thinks the risk of you is. You close the page without applying. For the next 10 days you shower at your sister's house. You tell her it's because your bathroom is being done. It isn't. When you go into the branch, the woman in front of you is laughing with the cashier about a holiday in Tenerife. Then it's your turn. The smile stays exactly where it is, but something behind it goes out. Professional now. Efficient. You ask whether anything can be done about the returned payment, and the cashier looks at her screen, and her face changes. Not disgust. Not even pity. Recognition. She has seen your category before. She explains the policy in about 40 seconds, and doesn't ask if there's anything else. The next customer steps up and the warmth comes back on. Walking to the door, you realize you weren't insulted, and you weren't really refused either. You were dealt with. Quickly, politely, and with no interest whatsoever in which particular person you happen to be. At £200, the bank knows you exist. It just has no reason to remember you. Level 3. £2,000. Then your salary starts landing properly. Same employer, same date, same amount, month after month. You don't think anything of it. You worked for it, of course it arrives. But a bank doesn't watch people. It watches patterns, and 6 months pass without the account going under. So the letters begin. You may be eligible. You have been pre-approved. A personalized offer is waiting. The same institution that wouldn't lend you £500 last year is now offering you a card with a £2,000 limit. You apply. It's approved in about 90 seconds, and the notification feels oddly personal, even though nobody was involved in the decision. You read it twice. You use it for new tires. You pay it down each month. The boiler gets fixed before the cold comes back. And for the first time in your adult life, a money problem is something that can be moved rather than simply survived. You walk into the branch and somebody says good morning before you reach the counter. Not warmth exactly. Recognition. You are no longer the account with the flag on it. You're the account with money arriving. The app starts making suggestions. Savings. Insurance. A packaged account at £5 a month with cashback and breakdown cover. The bank is talking to you now because there are finally things it can sell you. You didn't become a better person on the day your balance reached £2,000. You became predictable. And predictable money is useful money. Level 4. £15,000. The first time you see £15,000 in your own account, you take a screenshot. You don't send it to anyone. Some things feel too fragile to announce. It came slowly. Overtime, a promotion, a tax refund you didn't spend, 100 small evenings of leaving the thing in the basket. Then one morning you open the app and your credit limit has moved on its own. 4,000 has become 9. You didn't ask and nobody told you. The bank has decided you can be trusted with more money than you currently need. A week later the phone rings and it isn't a recording. He introduces himself as your relationship banker. You didn't know you had one. He gives you a direct number, a number that doesn't go through the menu, and asks whether you've got any plans for the next few years. A house, a car, investments. You spend most of the call quietly wondering why the bank has suddenly taken an interest in what you want from your life. When you had £200, nobody asked about your goals. They asked whether you'd read the terms and conditions. You take out a car loan, and the rate is lower than last time. The car didn't get cheaper and the bank didn't get kinder. Money simply costs less when you're not asking for it from a position of need. Then a strange charge appears on your statement. £28, you email him, and 3 hours later the reply says, taken care of. No phone menu, no explaining it 4 times, no promise that a manager will call within 48 hours, just gone. The fees that used to feel like weather have turned out to be negotiable. And that's the moment the whole thing comes into focus. The bank was never cruel to you when you were broke. Cruelty would have needed a person, and there wasn't one. Only a rule, applied identically to everyone who fell below zero. But when you're the one it keeps landing on, month after month, the difference between a rule and a grudge stops mattering very much. The bank is paying attention now. Not because it thinks more of you. Because losing you has started to cost something. Level 5, Premier. Your salary crosses 75,000, or the money you've saved and invested with them passes 100,000. Either door will do. And one morning a word appears inside the app that was never there before. Premier. There's no ceremony. You didn't win anything. A number crossed a line and the bank changed what it calls you. A new card arrives, heavier than the old one. And a new phone number. You ring the ordinary customer service line out of pure habit, and a recorded voice politely informs you that Premier customers have a separate number. Sit with that for a second. You have spent your entire life standing in one queue. You only find out there was another queue on the day they invite you into it. Your banker is called Daniel now. He remembers that you're moving house. He asks how your mother is recovering from her operation, because you mentioned it on a call 3 months ago. You're fairly sure he made a note. It still works. You go into the branch and somebody comes out of an office to meet you. No ticket. No sitting beside the machine watching the screen crawl from A47 to A48. You're walked past the chairs you used to sit in, and nobody in them looks up at you. You look at them. A mortgage offer arrives before you found a house. The bank has already decided what it would like to lend you. Another bank writes offering a better savings rate, and when you mention it to Daniel he calls back the same afternoon with something better. The institution that once let you sit on hold for 40 minutes now responds within hours, because somebody else has shown an interest in you. The lounge access isn't the real benefit. The metal card isn't the real benefit. The real benefit is that your inconvenience has become expensive. A problem that used to be entirely yours is now partly theirs. You aren't just profitable anymore. You're worth defending. Level 6. £500,000. At £500,000, the bank stops being a building and becomes a person who travels to you. Daniel introduces you to Rebecca from Wealth Management. She doesn't ask you to come in. She comes to your office with a folder of charts and forecasts and a set of questions the banking app has never once asked. When do you want to stop working? Are you planning to help your children buy? What happens to the business if you're ill? What should the money do after you're gone? The meeting runs 90 minutes, and at the end of it, she doesn't push anything across the table. She leaves a card and says she'll follow up. That's the tell. The selling already happened, you just didn't see it, because the product wasn't a product. The bank has stopped offering you things and started teaching you to need it. A product can be cancelled in an afternoon. A relationship is much harder to leave. When a large transfer is delayed, you make one call. Someone answers on the second ring and knows which transfer you mean before you finish the sentence. It's solved inside the conversation. The same problem at £2,000 would have taken 3 departments in a week. Then you're invited to a dinner. 8 clients, a private room, a speaker whose face you know from television. Nobody says out loud how much money anyone has, because nobody needs to. Money isn't the conversation. Money is the reason the room exists. And looking around the table, you understand that none of this is generosity. The dinner, the folder, the person who remembers your children's names, they're investments. Because someone with $500,000 today might have $2 million in 10 years, because your children will need somewhere to put theirs. Because a pension and a business and a portfolio can sit inside one institution for 30 years. At this level, you are no longer being served. You're being protected. Level 7. £3 million. Then comes private banking. Not Premier, not preferred, private. There is a bank on the Strand called Coutts. Older than most of the country's institutions, quiet about itself, and long associated with Britain's wealthiest families and with the royal household. To be a client there, the number beside your name has to be large. Millions, not thousands. And not long ago they moved that line considerably further up the hill, which tells you something on its own. Even at the top, a bank is constantly deciding which numbers are worth its attention. At £3 million, you don't fill in the same form as everybody else and hope the computer understands you. You have a private banker. Someone who knows how your money is actually arranged. Property, investments, a business, trusts, income arriving from places that don't fit into 5 boxes on a web form. And this is where the whole system quietly turns over. At every level below, being complicated worked against you. An unusual income meant delays. A missing payslip stopped the application. Anything that didn't fit the standard process became your problem to solve. Here, complication is the entire reason the banker exists. You want to buy a property before you've sold the last one. He works around the timing. You need money released against investments without selling them. A team looks at it. You have assets in 2 countries. Someone is introduced whose whole job is knowing what that means. The bank hasn't stopped caring about risk, and it hasn't stopped following rules. But the rules stop arriving as a flat refusal on a screen, and start arriving as a conversation. At -£4, a system spent less than a second deciding whether you could buy a sandwich. At £3 million, people will spend days deciding how to structure a loan so that it suits you. Your life didn't get simpler. You just became valuable enough for someone to sit down and understand it. That's what money actually buys at a bank. Not escape from the system. Enough importance to make the system slow down. Level 8. The bank meets you first. And then there is Hawes, a private bank on Fleet Street, founded in the 1600s and still owned by the same family, generation after generation. There's no advertising campaign. No commercial with a smiling couple holding the keys to a first home. It doesn't need millions of customers. It needs the right relationships. And before you become a client, you meet one of the partners. One of the people who actually owns the bank. Think about how far the thing has turned over. At level 1 you are trying to explain £4 to somebody who wasn't permitted to change the answer. At level 8, an owner of the institution sits down opposite you, before the relationship has even started. They want to understand your family, the business, your reputation, why the money exists, where it's going, what kind of relationship you're expecting. Because at every level below this one, you apply to them, you ask them to approve the card, the overdraft, the loan, the mortgage. At the very top, the bank is also deciding whether it wants you, and what it's buying isn't your salary, it's continuity. The banker knows the parents, then the children, then the grandchildren. The institution may hold one family's money for longer than any single member of that family is alive. You never have to explain your whole life again, because by now the story is the relationship. So look at the whole climb at once. At -£4, you were a flag on a screen. At 200, you were something to be dealt with. At 2,000, you became profitable. At 15,000, worth calling. At Premier, worth keeping. At $500,000, worth protecting. At 3 million, worth understanding. And here, at the top, you finally become worth knowing. Somewhere tonight, someone is standing at a Tesco self-checkout with a man waiting behind them, taking a sandwich back out of the bag because they are £4 short. They don't know that the same bank, the very same institution, the same logo on the same card, has customers who never hear hold music. Customers whose problems are solved inside a single phone call. Customers it takes to dinner. Customers who meet the owners before they're allowed to open an account. The bank will tell you that every customer matters. And in some broad corporate sense, that's probably true. But every customer does not matter equally. And the difference is hidden carefully, inside account tiers and service levels, and separate phone numbers you only ever receive after crossing a line you couldn't see. You are the same person at every balance. The bank simply changes what it calls you. A problem, a risk, a customer, a profitable customer, a premier customer, a wealth client, a private client, a relationship. It doesn't get warmer as the number grows, it gets more attentive. Because at every level, from the declined sandwich to the office on the Strand, it is quietly asking itself the same single question. What would it cost us to lose this person? At -£4, the answer is nothing at all. At 3 million, the answer has a name, a direct number, and a diary that clears itself. Same bank, same person, a different number, and an entirely different welcome. If you found this useful, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share with someone. It really helps the channel grow and reach the next person. I'll see you in the next one.